Okay, I found where I ended off last. This is going to be part 8. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel with the light novel stuff, I'd recommend doing so. And if you want, you can like the video later. That was all Momonga could come up with for the moment. He felt like he was probably missing a lot of things, but they could always discuss them later. It had only been a few hours since the crisis began. Okay, that's it for today. Everyone take a break and then begin your tasks. It's hard to tell when we'll be able to take it easy for a bit, so don't work too hard. The Guardians bowed their heads in understanding. Finally, there's something I would like to ask each of you. First, Shaltir, what kind of person do you see me as? A concentration of beauty. You are truly the most beautiful person in this world. Jewels don't hold a candle to your fair body. Considering he's a freaking lich, what do you... Dude. Shaltir, I know you like him, but good lord. Shaltir replied promptly. It was obvious from the unhesitating speed at which she responded that what she said was what she really thought. Cocytus, you are stronger than all the Guardians and truly fit to be absolute ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick. Aura, you're merciful and exceedingly considerate. Mari, I think you're super nice. Demiurge, you are wise in judgment and always make use of your energy to get things done, and I think the word inscrutable describes you well. Sebas, you were the leader of the supreme beings, and you are the merciful one who did not forsake us but stayed. Last but not least, Albedo. You are he who holds the highest position among the supreme beings and our exalted master, as well as the man I love. Oh, dear lord. Oh, boy. It's going to be interesting. I see. I think I have a sufficient understanding of everyone's thoughts now. I'm entrusting a part of the work my friends used to do to you. Strive to be ever loyal. Momonga teleported away as the Guardians humbly bowed before him again. The scenery changed at once from the arena to Lemegaton and its golems. Once he'd looked around to make sure no one was there, he heaved a sigh. I'm exhausted. He wasn't experiencing any physical fatigue, but he could feel the mental weariness weighing down on his shoulders. Why do they all think so highly of me? They must have been mistaken for someone else. As he was listening to them talk, he wanted to laugh and point out their error. He chuckled dryly and then shook his head. The looks on their faces and the mood in the room had told him they weren't joking. In other words, they'd been completely serious. If it didn't live up to their appraisal, they might be disappointed. The more he thought about it, the weaker he felt. And there was one other problem. Remembering it made him wince so hard it seemed like it would show on his skull. What should I do about Albedo? I can't face Tabula like this. Oh, and you can't even change it either! Oh no! You can't even change it back. Though if you did, that'd be kind of very, very strange for her to do a complete 180 like that. Intermission. The pressure all but forcing their foreheads into the dirt vanished. They were all aware their creator and master, worthy of their worship, had departed, yet no one stood up. Some time passed before someone let out a sigh of relief. The tense mood relaxed. The first one to stand was Albedo. The places where her knees had pressed her white dress into the ground had gotten slightly dirty, but she didn't seem to care one bit. She floated her wings to shake the dust off her feathers. As if given momentarum by Albedo's example, the others stood. Then scattered thoughts began to be voiced. That was really scary, huh, sis? Seriously, I thought I was going to be crushed. I'd expect nothing less from Lord Momonga, but to think that his power would affect even us Guardians. I knew that as one of the supreme beings he was stronger than us, but I didn't realize by how much. They all shared their impressions of Momonga. The pressure that had shoved them all toward the ground was the aura Momonga had been emitting. Aura of despair. It caused the fear status effect along with ability penalties. Normally, it shouldn't have worked on NPCs the same level as him, but the staff of Ainz Olgon had boosted its effects. Wait, so are they all... They can't all be... Are they all level 100? Dear Lord Almighty. Lord Momonga has shown us his caliber as a ruler. Oh wait, yeah, because they should be level 100 because they were able to take out the level 8, I think level 80 or 70 or something like that, fire elemental before with no problem. Lord Momonga has shown us his caliber as a ruler. Right? He had that authority all along, but he didn't exercise it until we gave our titles. The moment we presented ourselves as guardians, he unleashed some of his great power. You mean he showed us his ruler side in response to our oath of loyalty? That must be it. Yeah, he wasn't giving off an aura at all when he was with us. He was super nice. He even gave us something to drink when we were thirsty. The other guardians bristled. They were envious to the point where it showed. Albedo's reaction was especially big. Her hands shook and it seemed like her fingernails were about to rip through her gloves. Uh-oh. Mari's shoulders jerked and he spoke up in a loudish voice. So, that was Lord Momonga being all serious as the ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, huh? Amazing. The mood changed instantaneously. You're exactly right. He responded to our feelings by behaving in the manner of an absolute ruler. I'd expect nothing less of our Creator, the pinnacle of the 41 Supreme Beings, and our merciful Master who remained with us to the end. Everyone seemed enchanted, listening to Albedo's words, but only Mari's expression contained relief. The 41 Supreme Beings were their creators. Naturally, everyone was enveloped in incomparable happiness at having witnessed the true nature of one who deserved absolute devotion. The greatest joy of not just the Guardians, but anyone created by the 41 Supreme Beings was to be of use. After that came being paid attention. This was only logical, of course, for someone created to be useful to the 41 Supreme Beings. What greater joy could there possibly be? Seba spoke to disperse the lax atmosphere. Well, I'm going to head back. I don't know where Lord Momonga went, but I should probably be serving it aside. Albedo looked awkward for a moment, but recovered. Got it, Sebas. Attend him respectfully, and if anything comes up, let me know immediately. If he calls for me, I'll go running at once, no matter what I have to cast aside. Oh, dear Lord. Everyone's gonna have to listen to this. A lot. Demiurge, listening to this, had a faint look on his face that showed what a piece of work he felt she was. Ooh. Oh, boy. Albedo, I know you love him, but Jesus Christ, tone it down. You're making a bunch of them uncomfortable. Oh, but if he calls me to his bedchamber, tell him I'll need a little time. I should bathe first. Of course, if he says to come as I am, I don't mind at all. I'm keeping myself as clean as possible and paying meticulous attention to what I wear, so he can summon me at any time. In other words, though, it's only natural. Lord Momonga wishes to take priority. I understand, Albedo. If I waste too much time here, I won't have as much to serve Lord Momonga. That will be terribly rude to him, so apologies, but I take my leave. Excuse me, everyone. After saying his parting words to all the dumbfounded guardians, he jogged off. Demiurge spoke as if to dismiss Albedo's look that said she hadn't finished. Well, it sure is quiet. What's wrong, Shaltir? Oh, she's still on the ground. Oh, no. I know what this is. I don't want to say it. Everyone turned to look at her. She was still kneeling. What is it, Shaltir? She lifted her head only after being addressed a second time. Her unfocused eyes glistened. Is something wrong? The awesome presence was so thrilling that her in a quiet state. Oh, silence. No one knew what to say, so they just looked at one another. Shaltir had the most twisted fetishes of all the guardians, and all they could do was facepalm when they remembered her necrophilia. Oh, poor Mari, don't ever change. Don't ever think about it too hard. Please don't think about it too hard. Mari was the only one who didn't get it, and stood there looking perplexed. Don't explain it to him, please. Please. But there was one present who wouldn't let that be the end of it. Albedo. Something like jealousy caused her mouth to open. You bitch. The insult caused Shaltir's lip to curl into an alluring smile. Huh? Lord Momonga is one of the 41 Supreme Beings, as well as extremely beautiful. It's a reward to be hit with such a wave of power. You're crazy if you didn't get wet. Oh my god, I don't want to say this stuff. Well, I mean, the fact that she actually... The funny thing is, in which season was it? Season 3? It was either season 2 or season 3. I cannot remember for the life... Or, I don't know. One of the seasons after season 1, we actually find out that she's pure. She's not... She wasn't able to ride her... dang it, what was it? I don't remember what it was, but she's pure enough she could ride a unicorn. Which is funny. Maybe you weren't made pure at all. Maybe you're just a frigid... Maybe you're just frigid, You big mouth gorilla? What the fuck is a lamprey? Oh, I think I know what those are. I think those are, shoot. Dang it, I'm blanking on what they're called. Leeches. You lamprey. They glared at each other. The other guardians didn't think it would devolve into a death match, but they still looked on with anxiety. I was created the way I am by the supreme beings, and I have no complaints. Do you? You know, I'm pretty sure the same goes for me. Shelter slowly stood up, closing the distance between them slightly. Their eyes remained locked. They moved closer and closer together until finally they were bumping up against each other. You must think you've won because you're convinced you get to be close to Lord Ramunga just because you're captain of the Floor Guardians, but isn't that a bit far-fetched? Well, I do intend to achieve absolute victory while you're busy guarding the most remote areas of the tomb. Pray tell what you mean by absolute victory, Captain. A bitch like you ought to understand. Yes, I mean that. You too? Jesus Christ. Can we please move on to something else? I don't really want to hear about that stuff. Or read this. I don't want to say this stuff out loud. I can read it, but I just don't want to say it. During the exchange, their gazes didn't budge. They continued staring expressionlessly deep into each other's eyes. With a ruffling noise, Albedo's wings stretched out imposingly. In response, a black haze began to come off Shaltir. Aura, I leave the girls up to the girls. If something happens, I'll jump in to stop them, so just let me know. What? Demiurge? You're gonna shove us off on me? Demiurge backed away from the standoff, waving his hands in surrender. Kokaitis and Mare followed. They didn't want to get involved, and I don't blame them. Good grief, is this really worth fighting over? Personally, I'm quite curious what the outcome will be. What do you mean, Demiurge? Could be in terms of beefing up our war potential or the future of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. What does that mean, Demiurge? Demiurge wondered how to answer Mare's question. For a moment, the sadistic desire to spoil that innocent mind by filling it with, oh no, don't you dare! Don't you dare, Demiurge! Leave poor Mare's mind alone! With adult knowledge reared its head, but he dismissed it without hesitation. Thank you. Just like a demon should be, Demiurge was cruel and cold-blooded, but that was to outsiders of Nazarick. He would saw others created by the 41 Supreme Beings as precious comrades in his loyalty. A great ruler should have a successor, right? Lord Ramunga stayed with us until the end, but he could still lose interest in us and go where the others went. I don't think he can, not at this point. It'd be nice if he'd leave us someone for us to give our loyalty to if he leaves. So you mean you wonder who will be the heir's mother? That seems a bit disrespectful. Thank you for stopping him. It is our duty as guardians and creations to avoid that fate by remaining loyal to Lord Ramunga and working hard so he stays, Kokaitis interrupted. Demiurge turned to face him. Of course, I understand that, Kokaitis, but wouldn't you like to be loyal to Lord Ramunga's son as well? Who said it's going to be a son? Who'd be a daughter? Oh, dear Lord. I don't even want to think about that! I don't even think that'd be possible! Would that even be possible? That does sound pretty good, Kokaitis imagined, giving Ramunga's child piggyback rides. But he didn't stop there. He imagined giving him fencing lessons, drawing a sword to protect him from the oncoming enemy, and taking orders from him once he'd grown up. Oh, how wonderful. I can see it now. Just wonderful. He can call me uncle. Demiurge averted his eyes from Kokaitis and his uncle fantasies, wincing a bit. I'm also very interested to see to what extent children could be of use in a plan to strengthen the Great Tomb of Nazarick. I wonder, Mare, want to try making... No! Dude! This was not in the anime! No! No babies! No babies for Mare! He's still too young for that. Huh? What? That said, I suppose there's no one for you to do it with. True. And yet you're not opposed to a vampire and a succubus trying to get it on with a lich. If there are any humans, dark elves, or closely related species out there, I'll capture one for you, so how about it? Huh? What? Mari thought for a moment and then nodded. If it'd be useful to Lord Ramunga, then sure, but how do you make... No! Don't you dare tell him! Don't you dare tell him! He's still too young for that! Even by dark elf standards, I mean. Yeah, how do you make a baby? Right, I'll tell you when the time comes. But, if we go off performing breeding experiments on our own, Lord Ramunga might scold us. Nazarick's upkeep costs must be pretty precariously balanced. Yeah, once I heard that a single supreme being was spawning minions here on a very strict budget. If we make the population jump weirdly, we're sure to get scolded. I would hate for Lord Momonga to scold me. Oh, same here. No interest in getting scolded by a supreme being. If we could build a ranch somewhere outside of Nazarick, that might work, though. Excuse me. Leaving off there for that idea, Demiurge tossed a question at Mare about something that no one had mentioned yet. By the way, Mare, why are you dressed like a girl? He tugged at the edges of his skirt as if to hide his legs even a little more. That's what... Is this actually what the username is? Or is that a translation error? Please tell me. Because this says bubbling teapot chose. That doesn't sound like what they say in the anime. Let me know. She said I was a boy, so I don't think there's any mistake about my gender. She must have put some thought into it, then. That must be the proper attire for you, but I wonder if all little boys should be dressed the same way. No, it'd be fine if they dressed like they normally do. I'm not sure about that. Although they had mostly disappeared, once one of the 41 Supreme Beings' sacred names came into things, all one could do was accept the judgment. That meant the way Mare was dressed was the most correct way within the Great Tomb of Nazarick. If anyone was going to tell him to stop dressing that way, it would have to be another Supreme Being. I guess we need to consult Lord Momonga. It may very well be the case that all boys should dress that way. Cocytus, are you quite ready to come back to us? At the sound of his colleague's voice, Cocytus emitted a sigh of contentment from the bottom of his heart and then shook his head several times. What a lovely notion. It certainly is something to hope for. Oh yeah, good for you. Albedo, Shoutir, are you still fighting? The pair, still staring each other down, looked up when he called to them, but the one who answered Demiurge's question was standing off to the side, looking exhausted. Aura. The fight is over. Now the issue is simply who will be his first wife. We concluded that it would be bizarre for the absolute ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick to have only one queen, but now we have to decide who his primary will. That's very interesting, but tell me more later. More importantly, Albedo, could you give us some orders maybe? We got a lot of things that need to get moving. Yes, you're right. I need to give orders. Shoutir, let's discuss this further at a further date. I'm sure it will take more time than we have now anyway. I have no objections, Albedo. There's nothing that will take us long to discuss as well. There's nothing that will take us so long to discuss as this. Okay, very well. I'll come up with our plan going forward. Albedo had put on her Captain of the Floor Guardian's face, and all the Guardians responded by bowing their heads in respect. They bowed, but they didn't kneel. She was worthy of respect as their captain, but she was not absolute. There wasn't that much of a gap in status between those created by the 41 Supreme Beings. That said, it was the 41 Supreme Beings who had bestowed upon her the rank of captain, so she was given the respect appropriate for her position, and no more. Their behavior was a manifestation of that belief, and it didn't bother Albedo because she knew it was the most correct way to think. First, okay. There was so much stuff randomly lying around the dressing room adjacent to Momonga's private quarters that there was barely anywhere to walk. From things like robes that he could equip to full suits of armor he had bought but then threw in there after discovering he had no use for them. And it wasn't just protective gear. There were weapons from staves to great swords too. Really just all kinds of things. In Yggdrasil, players could create infinite unique items by inlaying existing items with data containing crystals that defeated monsters dropped. Players who preferred a certain style often stocked up on these types of items, which explained this room. Momonga casually chose a great sword out of the pile of countless weapons. It wasn't sheathed, so its silver blade gleamed in the light. The letter-like markings etched into the blade's cheek also caught the light and were clearly visible. He moved his arm up and down, testing the large sword's heft. It was extremely light, like a feather. Of course, it wasn't because the sword was made out of light nor material. Momonga was just that strong. As a magic user, he had high magic ability points and low physical ability points. Even so, by the time he hit level 100, he amassed quite a few physical ability points as well. So much so that it was a cinch for him to bludgeon low-level monsters to death with a staff. The moment Momonga attempted to slowly change to a fighting stance, the sound of metal hitting something hard rang through the room. The sword that should have been in its hands had fallen to the floor. The maid standing by immediately picked up the greatsword and offered it to him, but he didn't take it. He just stared at his empty hands. This was confusing. The existence of NPCs who behaved as if they were alive made him think this world wasn't the game, but these odd physical limitations made it feel like it had to be. I think it's kind of like the game, but it's not the game world. It's a completely different world entirely. But it does have some of the same limitations, like how he couldn't pick up the sword and use it because he's a mage and not a warrior. In Yggdrasil, since Momonga had never learned a warrior class, it would have been normal for him to not be able to equip a greatsword. But if this were a real world, common sense said he should be able to equip anything, quote-unquote. Momonga shook his head and gave up thinking about it. He didn't have enough information, so no answer would come, no matter how hard he racked his brains now. Clean this up, he ordered the maid, and then turned to face the large mirror that practically took up a whole wall. In it was a skeleton wearing clothes. If the body you were used to changed into some weird other thing, you'd think you'd be frightened, but Momonga wasn't frightened at all. It didn't even feel unnatural. He felt like there must be some reason for him beyond the fact that he had logged so many hours in Yggdrasil with this body. He also felt that in addition to his looks, his mind had changed quite a bit as well. First there was that thing where whenever his emotions fluctuated in a big way, it was like something suppressed them to level him out. And his desire had weakened. He didn't feel like he wanted to eat or sleep. He didn't feel like he did not feel sexual desire, but it didn't build even when Albedo pressed her softness up against him. Assailed by the feeling he'd lost something very important, his eyes unconsciously moved near his waist. I lost it before I even got to use it, huh? That sucks! So how is that even gonna work? How would they even do that? Are they gonna have to use magic to make a baby? That actually would make sense. The emotion went out of his extremely quiet utterance partway through. He had the awfully level-headed thought that perhaps, especially the mental changes, could be the result of an undead's perfect resistance to psychic attacks. Right now, I'm an undead body and mind with the vestige of a human clinging to them. That's why when my mood changes past a certain point, it gets suppressed. He wondered if there was any danger of going completely flat if he continued being undead. Of course, even if I have changed, it doesn't mean much. No matter what this world is like or what kind of being I am, I still have my will. Besides, there were beings like Shaltir. It might be too soon for blame everything on being undead. Create greater item. The moment he cast the spell, full plate armor covered him from head to toe. It was rather expensive looking. The fluted types, gleaming raven black with purple and gold accents. He tested some movements. His whole body felt heavy, but he wasn't so bad that he couldn't move. He would have thought there would be gaps between his body and the armor, considering he was all bones, but it fit perfectly. So, just like in Yggdrasil, I can equip an item if I create it using magic. Impressed, he looked through the slit in his close helmet at the mirror and saw a splendid warrior standing there. It was impossible to take him for a caster. He nodded emphatically and swallowed despite the lack of spit. He felt like a child who was about to say something he knew would make his parents mad. I'm going out for a bit. The guard is ready for you, the maid replied promptly, but he hated this. The first day the honor guard trooped after him, it was a little overwhelming. The second day, perhaps because he had gotten used to them, he'd wished he had someone to brag to. And the third day, he suppressed a sigh. It was too much. Walking around with an entourage, receiving deferential bows from everyone he met, if he could just let them follow him without thinking too hard, he might have been able to endure it, but that wasn't possible. He had to act the part of ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick and never show even a hint of weakness. For a regular guy like Momonga, it was mentally exhausting. Even if any large emotional fluctuations reversed to level out, he felt like his brain was being simmered on low heat. And then there was the beautiful, you could probably say super beautiful women who waited on him constantly, practically never leaving his side. He would have thought that as a man that would make him happy, but he ended up feeling more like his personal space was being invaded. This mental fatigue must be another vestige of my humanity. In any case, it was no good for the ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick just to be so mentally burdened in this crisis. There was a danger he might commit an error in some critical situation. I need to recharge. Having reached out conclusion, Momonga opened his eyes wide. Of course his face didn't move at all. The flames in his eyes just burned brighter. No, that's not what I meant. I'm going to go make some rounds on my own. Please wait, my lord. If something should happen to you while you are out alone, we would not be able to die under your shields. Faced with someone who had resolved to give up her life if she could protect her master, he felt heartless for trying to go on a solo walk just to relax. Still, it had been a little over 3 days since they found themselves in this strange situation, about 73 hours. After presenting himself with the dignity of the master of the Great Tomb of Nazarick for that long, his entire being was begging for a rest. So although he felt bad, he racked his brain for an excuse. There is something I must do, and utmost secrecy. I will not allow any escorts. A brief silence. After what felt like an awfully long time to Momonga, the maid answered, Understood. Be careful, Lord Momonga. Her buying his excuse felt like a stab in the chest, but he dismissed it. There's nothing wrong with taking a little break. I'll go see what it's like outside. Yes, it's crucial for me to see where we've been teleported to with my own eyes. The more he thought about it, the more excuses he came up with. Probably because he was aware that what he was doing was wrong, shaking off the nagging guilt, which manifested almost like someone was holding him back by his hair. Not that he had a scalp, he used his guild ring. He teleported to a large room. There were long, narrow stone platforms for laying out corpses, not that there were any now, on either side. The floor was made out of some kind of polished white stone. Behind him was a staircase that descended until it reached a large double door. The entrance to the Great Tomb of Nazarik's first level. The torches in the sconces built into the wall were unlit. The only light was the pale glow of the moon coming in through the main entrance. This was the part of the tomb closest to the surface, the central mausoleum. Even though just walking across that spacious room would take him outside, Momonga couldn't move his feet. He'd encountered something that unexpected. Across the room he saw a crowd of grotesques. There were 3 types of monsters, 4 each for a total of 12. One of these types had hideous, demonic faces with fangs. Their bodies were covered in scales, and their strong arms were equipped with sharp claws. They had long, snake-like tails and blazing wings of flame. They fit the image of a demon very well. The second type of monster had female bodies, sporting black leather bondage gear and crow heads. The final type was a demon that wore armor opened wide in front to display their magnificent abs. If it weren't for their bat wings and the horns sprouting from either temple, they wouldn't even look like monsters. Although the faces were those of beautiful men, their eyes glimmered with a desire that could never be fulfilled. Their names were Evil Lord Wrath, Evil Lord Envy, and Evil Lord Greed. All of their eyes turned at once to focus on Momonga, but none of the monsters made a move. It was a gaze worthy of the word. Their eyes exerted an almost physical pressure. All of these monsters were at levels somewhere between 80 and 90, and had been positioned as guards around Demiurge's residence, the Red Hot Shrine, where the gates to the 8th level was. Normally, undead mobs under Shalltear's control would be stationed this close to the surface, so why were Demiurge's bodyguards here? With the appearance of a demon who had probably been there behind them from the beginning, but difficult to make out in the shadows, that mystery was solved. Demiurge. When his name was spoken, a puzzled look appeared on his face. It could have been either that he wondered why his lord and master was in such a place, or that he was surprised by the appearance of an unfamiliar monster. Momonga bet on the smaller chance and continued walking. Even if his true identity hadn't been revealed by him standing there, it was too suspicious to remain. He decided to walk along the wall and try to slip past the demons without paying them any attention. He knew painfully well that their gaze was following him. He wanted to look at his feet, but he willed his weak spirit into submission and walked proudly chest out. When the distance between them had closed, the demons, as if by previous arrangement, all got down on one knee and bowed their heads. Bowing at the front of the line naturally was Demiurge. His movements were so smooth and refined he reminded Momonga of a nobleman out of a story. Lord Momonga, what in the world are you doing here without your guards? And what are you wearing? They'd seen through him instantly. Of course. He figured there was no helping the fact that he got caught by the one said to be the most intelligent in all the Great Tomb of Nazarik, but he realized it might have been obvious anyway because he had teleported. Only someone with the guild ring could teleport freely within the tomb, so it was a dead giveaway. Ah, well, I have my reasons, and as for why I'm dressed like this, I'm sure you already know. There were various shades of emotions crossing Demiurge's graceful features. Several breaths later, he answered, My apologies, Lord Momonga, but I am unable to fathom the depths of your profound... Call me Dark Warrior. Lord Dark Warrior. Demiurge looked like he wanted to say more, but Momonga endeavored to ignore it. He knew it was an embarrassingly generic name, but it fit right with the other monster names. There wasn't any deep reason for the name change. Now the only ones present were Demiurge's underlings, but they were all right near the entrance. There would probably be lots of minions coming through, and he didn't want them all calling him Momonga. A light of understanding had gone on in Demiurge's expression. What had he decided Momonga was feeling? I see. So that's why. Huh? You see what? Momonga stopped himself from asking. He was just an ordinary guy. He couldn't imagine what line of reason Demiurge had used, or what kind of conclusion he had reached with his own overwhelming wisdom. He just stood there under his closed helmet in a non-existent cold sweat, hoping his true intentions wouldn't be found out. Dark Warrior, I have grasped one part of your profound intentions. It is certainly a show of consideration befitting our ruler. However, it would not do for me to overlook you being out without any escorts. I deeply understand what a bother this must be, but I beg that you will pity me with your mercy. I suppose I have no choice. I will allow one guard to accompany me. An elegant smile spread across Demiurge's face. I appreciate you granting my selfish request, Lord Dark Warrior. You don't need the Lord with Dark Warrior. Just Dark Warrior will do. Surely you can't be serious. Such a thing would be unforgivable. Of course, if it were an infiltration mission, or I was on a special mission and had orders from you to that effect, I would obey them, but do you think there's anyone in all of Nazarick who would refer to you as Lord Dark Warrior without Lord? Momonga was overwhelmed by Demiurge's ardent speech and nodded several times. That said, inside he had the feeling that this repeated emphasis on Dark Warrior was meant to poke fun at the absurdity of it, and he began to regret choosing the name so hastily. How rude of me. I am taking up your precious time, Lord Dark Warrior. Then you will all stand by here and explain where I've gone. Understood, Master Demiurge. Well, it seems like your minions have agreed. Shall we, Demiurge? Demiurge bowed as a token of his subordination, and Momonga slipped past him to head out. Demiurge straightened up a moment later and accompanied him. Okay. Do I even want to try to continue, or... I think I'm going to end it off here. I will see you guys in the next part.